Today, an expert on the family, on mental health, and alcohol and drugs. Dr. David Kaptain in the house today on Recovery Monday.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope, open my eyes to see the world through different eyes, revealing your light, restoring hope.
But welcome. It's the 5th day of January in the Lord's year 2015. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is the Monday edition of Recovery Monday, Restoring Hope Live. Lila is not with us today. And if you live in central Iowa or are aware of what's happening here, you know that we have I would say this is the winter's first major snowstorm. It's mainly to the north of us. We're supposed to get, what did I hear, 5-6 inches?
Or 7.
Mm-hmm. Or 7? Okay. I know up in the Sioux Falls area, they're talking about a foot of snow.
Yep. And
so this is the first major blast. So Lila decided that it would be safer for her to stay home rather than try to brave the roads. So the 4 people who really believe that addictions can be beat are here today. We're the tough ones that came into work. Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat, Ryan's producing. I'm Mac, and my guest today is Dr. David Kaptain. And David has been the leader of Powell?
Yeah, manager.
Okay.
Yep.
But leader's a proper word, because you have kind of a team.
Yes.
All right. And a good leader, too. And he's here to talk a little bit about what Powell offers and things like that. And we're also going to talk about the fact that David's last day at Powell is today.
Tomorrow.
Yep. And he's going into private practice here in Des Moines. And so I want to talk to him a little bit about that. Before we get going, I want to thank those of you who are listening who have offered prayers for the last 2 weeks to my family and I. You know, I think it's interesting how God teaches us something about ourselves. Because when he teaches us something about ourselves, and at least for me, I can't speak for you, but if I'm in tune with the Holy Spirit, it is a huge red flag. In other words, he makes sure that I notice it. What am I talking about? There's not a week that goes by that somebody doesn't say something like this to me. Yeah, we buried my mom last week. Or we buried my grandmother. Or we buried my father. Or my father's passed away. Or I see it on Facebook. Or I hear it, read it in the newspaper. And, of course, I always say, yeah, I'm sorry. That's tough. How are you doing? And I had no idea how taxing emotionally and mentally that can be on a person until this last couple of weeks. And for those of you that have been following on Facebook, this is old news, but let me just catch you up. My mom, who's 84 years old, is on vacation in California with my dad, who's 85, staying with my sister. Her age isn't important. And all of a sudden, where are we at? Sunday, so a week ago yesterday, she collapses and is rushed to the hospital, and they do an emergency surgery because she had a twisted bowel. Now, Bob, have you ever heard of that term before?
I have heard of it. Yes.
I've never heard that term in my life, twisted bowel. So they operated on my mom, and she came out good. She's up and around and alert. However, she can't keep anything down. So they've given her an MRI. The MRI was clean. She's got to have 48 hours in the hospital getting food down before they'll let her out. And she's now been in a San Diego hospital for, it'd be 8 days. And mom's going to be okay. I mean, unless something really bizarre happens, she's going to be fine. On the other side of the family is my wife's mother, Jeanette. And Jeanette is 91. And Jeanette is the closest thing to Jesus I've ever met. I know that's a big statement, especially on a Christian radio station. I've never met anyone who was more like Jesus than Jeanette. She had 5 kids. Her husband was a preacher, preached until he was 90. Her daddy was a preacher, Grandpa JJ, and her grandfather was a preacher. So this young lady was raised in the religion business, the church business. Never heard her say a foul thing about anybody, even when it was deserved. Never heard her raise her voice. Never. You know what never means? Never. I've never ridden an elephant, and I never heard my mother-in-law raise her voice. She is the sweetest, kindest person I have ever met in my life. In fact, it was when meeting her many, many years ago, I knew that I was making the right choice to marry her daughter, because if she came out if my wife came out anything like her mother, I had my dream girl, which, by the way, she did. Grandma has had great health. I call her Grandma. Grandma has had great health for 90 and a half years, but this last 6 months have been tough. 2 weeks ago, she was rushed by air ambulance from Platte, South Dakota to Sioux Falls, South Dakota with, guess what? A twisted bowel. What are the odds of that?
Very high.
Since then, they have found that there are other issues inside, and Grandma's not going to be with us this side of heaven very long. There have been a couple of days where we've rushed to the hospital because the doctor said this is probably it. And then the next morning, she springs back like a chicken and just starts making trouble all over the place. I'll give you an example of what Grandma Jeanette would do. Grandma Jeanette would look at me and say, Isaiah 6. And then she'd say Isaiah 6:21. In other words, book, chapter, and verse. And I would go get a Bible or look it up on my phone, and I would read it to her. And she always knew what it was. Always. This is 30 years. Well, I was reading scripture to her in her room in Sioux Falls the other day, and it was something in Kings, which is just one of my least favorite books because you have to be a expert Greek and Hebrew linguist. And as I was reading, I mispronounced a name. Funny me, right? And she's laying in bed, her hands on her chest, her eyes are closed. I don't even know if she's awake. And I say this name, and she looks up at me, eyes open, gives me the correct pronunciation, lays her head back down, and goes back to sleep. This woman knows her Bible. Anyway, I appreciate all your prayers, and I've just never been through anything like this in my life. Never. These 5 girls, the 4 sisters and my daughter, you've heard the term mother bear before. Well, these are all mother bears when it comes to their cubs, their kids. But now they're doing it for their mom and grandma. I do not want to be the staff of that hospital. There is not a day that goes by that they are not confronted with the kind of questions that doctors and nurses probably would prefer not to answer because they're tough questions. But with 2 nurses among these 5 women, they want to know the answers, and they want to know it in their language. They don't want to know it in bedside speak. My wife has been there for 2 weeks. My daughter has been there for 2 weeks. I just got back, and I will return when my wife says she needs me there or when we're making arrangements. So if for some reason I'm gone off the radio later this week, that is the reason why, and I would ask your continued prayers. All right. David, thanks for letting me take your time to thank my audience for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Congratulations on going into private practice.
Yeah, thanks.
Is this something you always wanted to do, or you knew eventually you'd do this?
Not necessarily. I mean, it's been something I've been doing part-time for 15 years now, so it's always been kind of a part of what I'm doing professionally.
Yeah.
And recently, really within this last year, there just became a good opportunity for me to join the practice that I'll be working with, and I decided to take that.
Well, and by reputation, you're joining probably the best family counseling center. Was that what we call it? Or team?
Yeah, it's a team. It's an association of counselors, and I appreciate you saying that. I feel good about it too. I mean, it's a very good group of counselors.
Yeah, Family Legacy Counseling,
Yes,
which is kind of behind the Dolls on 86th Street in Johnston.
In Johnston, that's right.
Am I right on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 5415 Northwest 88th.
Yeah, Suite 100.
Yep.
So I want to talk a little bit about that, but I want to start with Powell's approach to family counseling. Because,
you bet.
I went to a 12-step meeting today, my regular Monday meeting, and there was twice as many people as we usually have. And that's par when it comes to after the New Year's.
Yep.
Because a lot of times drinking and drugging issues are spotlighted over holidays because families are forced to be together. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the assumptions of how they need to be present for family events. And if they're alcohol users or drug abusers, that usually goes over the top a little bit. Mm-hmm. So what's Powell's approach to dealing with the family?
Yeah, Powell's got I feel like one of the best family programs around, associated with a treatment center, especially an outpatient treatment center. So what we do, we've got family staff that have been there. In fact, our main family coordinator has been with Powell for over 35 years.
Is that Dee?
Yeah, no, Teresa.
Teresa, okay.
And she's fantastic. So what we have is a couple of dedicated nights a week to family programming, which includes a variety of lectures and group therapy types of offerings that people can go to, as well as intervention services that are run by our very qualified volunteers who come in and help families set up an intervention if they wish for their loved one. The family program is included as a part of the treatment. So if you have a family member in the treatment program at any level, and you can come and participate and be a part of the family program. We also bring people in to just do the family thing, even if they can't get their person to come into treatment for whatever reason. They're welcome to come join the family program for really a very nominal fee to participate in 6 to 8 weeks worth of programming there.
And the thing that people don't understand, and I don't mean to be arrogant when I say that, but this is a family disease.
Oh, yeah.
This is not a disease that impacts one person. In fact, most of what has to be taken care of when someone finally enters a 12-step program is to deal with the family.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What's the biggest mistake people make when it comes to family counseling?
I think one of the biggest mistakes people can make going into early recovery is to expect that things are going to magically be better. In fact, for a lot of the family dynamic things that are important to consider, as far as like communication, problem solving, things like that, they tend to get worse because now, for the first time, your chemically dependent person is maybe paying attention to things and deciding that they have an opinion now, and maybe are resorting to some negative ways of trying to get their way. Whereas before, if alcohol or drugs were a part of the picture, it was very easy for them to check out and to not be a part of major decisions or how to handle this or handle that at home. And so consequently, there's even increased conflict when somebody gets sober initially. So, the big mistake might be just thinking that, okay, all of a sudden things are going to be really magically better.
Oh, yeah.
They actually might be worse. And then again, I mean, I don't want to diminish that at all as far as the change, because things are better. They're not drinking or they're not using drugs, and all of the bad consequences associated with that have come to an end.
Dr. David Kaptain with a K is our guest. He is a family therapist with Family Legacy Counseling, and he's also spent the last 15 years?
Well, at Powell in particular, it's been 6.5 years.
6.5.
Yep.
And we'll come back on this Monday edition of Recovery Monday here on Restoring Hope Live.
headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
21 minutes past the hour. This is Restoring Hope Live Recovery Monday with Powell CDC. And our guest is Dr. David Kaptain, who is the last 6.5 years, he's been the leader of the team of people who help your friends and my friends and your family and your friends at church and in the choir. And yeah, you did you think just because you believe in Jesus that you can't suffer from a disease like alcohol or drug addiction? I'll never forget one day, Pastor Mike. Never forget this. Did I ever tell you this story? Mm-mm. This was the sermon that he delivered about 3 weeks before I quit drinking. And this sermon really had an impact on me. He had this long 20-foot, let's say, chain. And these were not plastic links. These were real links, okay? They're not like boat links, but this is big links.
Yeah.
And he starts out the sermon and he says, pick any row in this room and count out 10 people. And he said, the first 3 of you have an alcohol or drug addiction. The next one has a porn addiction. You and you and you. And when he gets to the 10th, and he said, and yours is coming. And then as he does this sermon on addictions, every time he got to a new addiction, he'd take that chain and he'd wrap it one more time around his neck and his shoulders. And then he'd march back and forth on the podium or whatever you want to call it. We call it the football. And then he'd mention another one, and he'd take that chain and he'd put it around. Now, Pastor Mike's a big man, 6'8".
Yeah.
And I don't know how he did it, but boy, did it connect, at least to me.
Yeah.
About, and then, of course, he went through it spiritually, too. And the message that he gave that I think I needed to hear that day was, it's okay. Christians gamble.
Yeah.
Christians look at porn. Christians drink too much, or they argue, they swear.
Mm-hmm.
Christianity is not about how you act. It's about the forgiveness for that grace. And that just blew me away that day.
Mm-hmm.
Blew me away. So we were talking about families, all right? And it's interesting because one of my meetings that I go to is in the chapter of the family right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about how for the person who's addicted, don't go running out and make all these amends and tell them you're sorry. And just because you stop drinking on Sunday doesn't mean everything's going to be fine on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard on both sides, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is tough. It's really hard for the family to adjust to a new kind of level of normalcy.
Yeah.
Once the addicted person stops doing what they've been doing, and I would agree with your statement. Also, and within the 12-step program too, you don't really recommend to go out and start just jumping into your 4th and 5th step, because there's a lot of work to be done ahead of time.
Yep.
and a lot of strength to be gained through days and weeks and months of sobriety.
Yeah.
And, it's just learning to adjust to this new normal as well.
I always like the term, there's a tremendous amount of power in being powerless.
Yeah.
And that is so true.
Yeah.
With this addiction.
Yeah, really realizing that this thing is bigger than you, that it is indeed a physical, emotional, spiritual affliction. I mean, addiction has there was really good reasons why they termed alcohol cunning, baffling, and powerful. When they first wrote the AA Big Book. I mean, those are not normal words to describe some sort of a disease. You're talking about something that is planful, that it's got a bad attitude. It knows what it's doing. It knows your weaknesses. It knows its own strength. It's really a very unique problem, and a very powerful problem if it's left untreated.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, here's God the Almighty, and he makes this incredible thing called a grape.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow we figure out how to screw it up and turn it into the most dangerous substance. Would I be okay, Bob, to say this is the most dangerous substance on earth? Alcohol?
Well, it's probably the most common, and it's legal. And so that means if it's legal, then people think, well, then it's okay for me to have this stuff because it's legal. And so it's the most abused drug out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had somebody in the meeting the other day, and her kids are in the late teens and early 20s. And guess what they're doing now? And it's just breaking her heart.
Yeah.
And when she tries to say something to them, guess what they say? Yeah, right. Like you got any right to tell me anything.
Mm.
One of the things I remember in family dynamics, and the way it was described to me is if you take a beach ball and you hold it underwater, and when you let it go, it doesn't just rise to the surface and sit there. Mm-hmm. It goes way up in the air.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those family members have been holding a lot of stuff in because it's not safe to approach Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Not just about his drinking, about anything.
Yeah.
We become so difficult to deal with.
Oh yeah.
Everybody says, "Well, I'm only that way when I'm drunk." That's not true. It's the isms in alcoholism that is with us always and forever. And when that beach ball, your spouse or your child, when it gets to the top, it doesn't just rest and say, "Oh, thank heavens Dad's not drinking anymore." It shoots clear to the top. And I've known people who 4, 5, 6 years sober, things are just starting to get normal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why does it take that long?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to how damaging addiction is to the family. And it reduces communication, sometimes makes it impossible. A lot of resentments and frustrations and angers and things like that can build up over time, like you were describing. And, trust is a factor here too, that when the family finally learns to trust that the addicted person is actually in recovery and that this is not just some, cycle where things are good for a while and then they're going to, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that just comes with longer and longer term recovery. So they begin to see and kind of dare to trust that it's for real and that this person is going to stay in recovery regardless of what they say or do. And then it becomes safer to start talking about issues and resentments and things that they still have carried over.
Yeah.
From those years.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. David Kaptain is my guest. He is with Family Legacy. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Counseling out on North 86th in Johnston behind the Dolls. He's also been the director of Powell for the last 6.5 years. And Powell is the place to go if any of this is ringing true for you. Mm-hmm. Now, you just got through the holidays, and somebody came to your house, or you went somewhere, and somebody that you love, or you're supposed to love, who is blood, who is family, by marriage or without, acted up because of alcohol or drugs. Everybody's got an Uncle Bob. Everybody's got an Uncle Bob. Everybody's got an Aunt Joyce, who, when family comes around and the festivities begin to fly, so does the drinks or the drugs. You now have a place to turn. See, one of the reasons we do this program is so you know people. You know you can call Bob. You know you can call me. You know you can call David. You can call Lila. You can call Powell at 263-2424. You now have somebody that you can trust. Nobody with white coats and a screaming siren is going to rush up to your house after you make the phone call. I think my son, I think my daughter, I think my husband has a problem. I think my pastor has a problem. I think somebody in the choir with me has a problem. I can just tell. I can smell it on their breath when they come and stand next to me and sing. You now know somebody who can help you. Somebody who understands what this addiction is about. It's the folks at Powell. 263-2424. Just call up and tell them you got a problem. My wife's got a problem. My grandmother's got a problem. And they know exactly what to do with it. So call Powell, 263-2424. David Kaptain is my guest. 6.5 years he ran Powell. Is there, how do I say this? A lot of times marriages fall apart after somebody becomes sober. Mm-hmm. Share with the audience why that is, because that dumbfounded me when I first heard this, but it's true.
Yeah, well, what's hard is the way that the family needs to find a new normal after somebody gets sober. And so not only does the addicted person have to learn new ways of communicating, but actually the family has to learn new ways of communicating with each other and with the addicted person as well. And there's a unique problem called codependency that often comes up in families. And actually, unbeknownst to members of the family, it's actually supporting that person's continued drinking or continued drug use. And so now when all of a sudden they get sober and they're not doing some of those same things again, the person who had developed maybe a real strong case of codependency is learning that, wow, I have to learn to communicate in a more straightforward manner, and I have to not try to manage everything around me, and I have to try to approach getting something from my spouse in a non-manipulative way. Just be straightforward and honest, and speak truth, and let's talk about it, as opposed to having to try to do lots of workarounds, which is kind of inherent to the codependent process.
Workarounds?
Yeah, I mean, for example, like a codependent spouse might be making lots. They might do a lot of extensive planning around their spouse's drinking, for example. So they'll manage this and manage that, and make sure that they're making phone calls to kind of explain things away, or to make sure that certain bills get paid or whatever, because they know that their spouse who is in the throes of addiction is not going to take care of it. So they're having to manage everything, and they're driving themselves crazy too as a result of it. So I mean, codependency is a very, very difficult thing to address, and a lot of times the person with the strong codependency finds that they have to really work hard to kind of redefine their role in the family now, because the alcoholic or the drug addict is now starting to take more responsibility and is having more of an opinion, and really is actually more involved in those normal everyday things that they should have been a part of all along, but they because of the addiction they haven't been.
I remember I had been sober about a year, and I was whining and huffing and puffing whatever I was doing. And I said, I don't even think anybody in this family notices that I'm sober. And my son-in-law, God bless him, turned his head, just like lightning, looked at me and says, oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And we got to talk about that later, and about how I impacted him. Because he started dating my daughter when I think my daughter was 16. They went to church together. And I was a real bad guy. I was that puffed up chest dad who, you're going to date my daughter, huh? Well, here's all the hoops you got to jump through.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be that way, but I was. Luckily, I got to figure that out and make my amends.
Yep.
And that's kind of what you learn in the family counseling.
Yeah, the family counseling process might be, for the first time, the recovering person is hearing about it clearly, about the impact of what their choices or their actions had been, during the course of the addiction. And the counseling process can actually help bring that out a little bit sooner, so that you can get right to the healing part.
We're coming back. Dr. David Kaptain in the house. When we come back, mental illness and addiction. How are the two tied? We'll talk about that live here on Restoring Hope Live on Recovery Monday, brought to you by Powell.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Homs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're gonna make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money back guarantee on what we do. What type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
22 minutes before the top of the hour on this Monday on The Truth 99.3. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you. David Kaptain is my guest. He has been the team leader at Powell for the last 6.5 years, and he's now going into private practice at Family Legacy Counseling. If you're not familiar with Family Legacy Counseling, and I'm not saying this because David's in the room, they're probably one of the most well-respected counseling groups in our community. And am I correct in saying they're all Christian counselors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get Christian counseling.
Right.
It means you're going to get counseling. Well, you say it. How would you say that?
Well, that's a good question. It's counseling with where you can be assured of that your counselor has a Christian worldview that is probably a lot like your own. So, the counselor's practice is not to slap a Bible down and on the table between the two of you and just say, okay, we're gonna find here what the Word says. However, when opportunities come up where there's something, as there often is, we know that the Bible approaches so many things of life with a clarity that you can't get anywhere else. And if it fits, then I personally, as a counselor, I'm happy to add that in, and it works. But we're not banging it over. We're not hitting people over the head.
Right. No.
But do you prepare yourself? I guess what I'm saying is in prayer, to say, hey, Lord, lead me, guide me to say the right thing and receive these things.
Absolutely. And, one of the greatest privileges, I think, is to be able to, end a counseling session with prayer if they're comfortable with that and if it seems applicable, you bet. I mean, why? If you can't pull God into the practice there or into the process, and we're really not taking advantage of the best support.
Well, I know that when my daughter and my youngest daughter, who's 27, went through counseling last year. Ooh, I could say that now. Oh, it was all way last year. Mm-hmm. The counselor started out with prayer, and invited the Holy Spirit into the room. For me, that helped.
Yeah.
It just, it was a reminder that I'm not in charge here. I'm just following God's will, or I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
So that was nice that the counselor, would look at it that way.
Yep.
Let's talk about mental health issues. Every time some crazy guy takes a gun and kills somebody, we hear about mental health. And then it just kind of fades away.
Yeah.
It's no longer the headline. And then it becomes, well, we need gun control and we need schools to do this or schools to do that. Why, as a society, are we so allergic to talking about mental health issues?
I think mental health is tough because it's not easy to be comfortable with some of the topics that come up as a result of it. So like you talked about, there are horrible things that happen to be associated with mental health issues. So, people suffering from paranoia or from a lack of impulse control, for example, do terrible things. As do people who don't. We all know that there's many aspects that go into criminal activity, but unfortunately, when a mental illness comes into the picture, then it gets a really unfair amount of blame cast upon it for the cause of these terrible acts and things. And it's hard because people are uncomfortable with the emotions of anxiety and of depression and of stress. When we feel those things ourselves, that's all too familiar. But you hate to feel those senses, those periods of time of distress, and so we're not at all as a society very comfortable, I think, with ourselves feeling, out of sorts, and So when we know that others are too, we don't really know what to do with it.
All right, now I'm going to make this statement, not David Kaptain. So if this is an incorrect statement, don't blame it on him. What's our the following is not the opinions or the views of Bob Montserrat, David Kaptain, Powell, CDC, Ryan, or anybody else.
But it could be.
My experience is that most people who abuse drugs and alcohol have a mental illness. Now, that's my opinion, not yours, but I would like your thoughts on that.
It depends on how you define most. So if you're saying most is 55% or more, then you could say yes. It's very, very common for mental illness or behavioral health issues to come into play when people have an addiction, because there's two ways that it can happen. One, maybe there's an underlying mental health issue like anxiety or depression or mood dysregulation, for example. So the person ends up discovering that drugs like marijuana or alcohol sort of, have a leveling out effect, or, I feel like I can cope now. I don't have to worry about so many things. And as a result, develop an addiction because, it just sort of progresses from there. If I can feel this good, maybe I'll feel even better. Or if I try a different drug, maybe that's going to work even better for my anxiety. Now, the other way that this happens is when somebody begins to be abusing substances, and they may have never had anxiety or depression or mood instability or psychosis or whatever, but that kicks off a process that would normally have not happened if it were not for the action of the alcohol or of the drugs. So you've got kind of a tipping point that happens either way. So there may be the underlying mental illness that encourages addiction, or maybe the addiction itself has touched off a mental health process that would not have normally happened without that trigger.
How often, when you're treating a couple, let's say that my wife and I came in for counseling, how often into the process do you say to yourself, there's a mental illness issue here that's not being addressed?
Probably 40 to 50% of the time.
And
the longer that person is in counseling, the more apparent that it will be that there's something else going on. So where, an underlying anxiety or depression issue, most commonly, is kind of what comes to the forefront.
But don't you really have to tiptoe around that? Because if I can remember years ago, and I'm in counseling with my wife, and if the counselor would have said, Mac, I think you have some mental health issues, I would have bolted.
Yeah, well, it kind of depends. It depends on the patient, and depends on the therapeutic alliance that's been developed between the counselor and the family.
Yeah, that's true.
And, a lot of times that can seem not all that, after all of the chaos that the family has gone through and that the individual has gone through to get to the point to where they're really opening up to a therapist and a counselor, to sort through these things, I find that the majority of the time people don't freak out about it. They want to know, well, how do I address this too?
Yeah.
Because now I'm seeing that there is a connection between my depression and my drinking, for example.
How often do you face a situation where one of the spouses or one of the family members looks at the other family member and says, if you don't blank, I'm gone. If you don't blank, you're kicked out of the house.
Yeah, frequently. In fact, that kind of boundary often needs to be set with the alcoholic or the addict in order for them to really see what they have to lose if they don't treat this thing. Not apparent enough is what's happening to them as an individual, and the addiction helps blind them from that. So often it takes the people around them being able to really speak truth and say, yeah, if this doesn't change, then here's what will change. Our relationship will change. Your ability to stay in the house will change. Your ability to drive our kids around will change. Those kinds of things are.
I've heard
those
that.
are hard boundaries.
I've heard that more often since I took the 12 steps up, and that was parents who said my spouse wasn't going to let me pick up the kids anymore.
Yeah,
and I never thought about that.
Yeah.
But that's real dangerous on those kids.
Oh,
if
absolutely.
Mom's been drinking since noon, and she goes and picks up the kids.
Yes. Yeah, or dad gets them after, whatever.
Long day at work.
Yeah.
David Kaptain is my guest. He's with Family Legacy Counseling, and he has run Powell for the last 6.5 years. When we come back, we'll talk about how you can help a neighbor and how you can impact your family. That's next on The Truth.
A father who is headed toward another heart attack. A woman who struggles daily with diabetes and her memory. A boy whose headaches keep him out of school. A mother who one morning discovers a lump. A girl whose condition defies diagnosis. You come to us because you need answers, but you also need more. You need understanding of what you're going through. You need comfort. You need to be treated as an individual, not a condition. You need to be included in your own care. You are the point of everything we do. That's why we're changing to Unity Point Health. It's a model of care that will help us work better together, where the physician who knows you best takes the lead, coordinating your care through every step, from the hospital to specialists to rehabilitation to health services in the home and in the community, to making sure the treatments are effective. By working as a team, we surround you with care, helping you manage your health and your conditions, guiding you to making better choices and living a healthier life. The point of Unity is you. Unity Point Health.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can give these grandkids back, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We can help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah! If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Restoring hope, open my heart to sing, taking the darkness inside, revealing your light, restoring hope.
10 minutes before the top of the hour on this Monday, the 5th day of January in the Lord's year 2015. I'm J. Michael McCoy, and this is Restoring Hope Live, Recovery Monday, brought to you by Powell CDC. We'll talk a little bit more about Powell as we wrap up the show today. But, Bob, you asked David a very interesting question when the mics were off, and I want you to ask him when the mics are on, because I want to talk about that a minute.
Sure. The question I had was, once a person in a family sobers up and there are family difficulties because they're not used to this new person, and there are many different reasons. I was just wondering, is there a percentage of how many families actually break up?
Yeah, I kind of wish I had a number at the top of my head that might be able to explain that. I think, just personal experience from the 24 years in the field that I have, I know that what is very common is for things to get worse before they get better, and those families that are willing to do some of the extra hard work that it's going to take to continue to get through those changes and those differences, those are the ones that succeed. So whether they, do that on a individual family counseling level, or if they do that as part of like a, bigger group type of offering, like what they do at Powell, for example, and they're willing to walk through that and to stick through it, even though it's miserable to kind of schedule it and to try to get there and, to do all, just basically I'm saying do the hard work of getting through it. They're going to increase their likelihood of staying together and just coming out on the other end of it in a totally different way, a way that didn't exist in the family before.
Well, that's got to be difficult, I would think, for a person that is the alcoholic once they lose their family, even when they did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the reasons I was given up front was do not quit drinking because of your family or your marriage. Do it for yourself. Do it because you want it. And I understood that because I drilled that in my head, and I understood it after a while because it would have been so easy to just go back and drink because my wife made me mad or one of the kids did something.
Yeah.
That's my excuse. I'm doing this for you. You're not feeding me back. Boom, drinking. And now it's your fault. It's not my fault anymore I'm drinking. If you hadn't done blank, I wouldn't be drinking.
Yeah. Well, and that's where that hard boundary setting thing comes into play, like what we were talking about a little bit earlier before the break, is, as families kind of learn about the dynamics that are needed in order to do healthy recovery, which includes good boundary setting, such as, no, I'm not going to accept that as an excuse anymore for you relapsing, is that there's something that I've done,
Yeah.
And being able to kind of work through that and talk about it in sober times and making sure that everybody's just really clear that we're all on the same page about what it means to use or to not use and whose fault or responsibility it is. One of the things that we really try to focus on at PAL is that once people have the information that we've given them because of they've participated in our treatment program, all of a sudden now they've got automatic responsibility to put those things into play because they know how it works now. They've learned about the dynamics of addiction. They've learned about how their behavior has interfered in the lives of others around them, and now knowledge is power, and responsibility. You have to do something with that, and that's where addiction doesn't have its own power and influence. It needs us to cooperate with it. In order to do its worst stuff. And so we really make an effort to make sure that people that come through our program understand that and they get it.
Yeah. David Kaptain is our guest, Family Legacy Counseling, and formerly, I shouldn't say formally, but been with Powell for 6.5 years. The other issue, of course, is when you've got a couple of young folks, we were all young at one time, and part of their courtship or relationship is drinking, drugging, going out and having fun. One of them figures out they can't handle it, or somebody tells them they can't handle it.
Yeah.
And the other one says, wait a minute. What do you mean we can't go out and dance on Saturday night anymore? What? Because this whole business that I can go to the bar and not drink, that's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are people out there that can do that. I can't.
Right.
And I haven't met anybody that I know of that can. How do you speak into that marriage with love? That marriage needs to stay together.
Right. Well, and I think the scenario that you bring up is pretty common, particularly if maybe one spouse is not really an addict or an alcoholic. They're like a normie. They can take it or leave it, but they still kind of like it. And they haven't really developed alcoholism yet, for example. So they're not really sure they want to give up their drinking or the ability to have some wine at dinner or to go out and have more than a couple of drinks once in a while. I try to really emphasize with couples that are in that situation is that if you want to be really supportive of your alcoholic in recovery, how important is it to you really that you have that right to go drink or that right to enjoy the wine in front of them or to have it in the fridge. And really just try to kind of speak truth in a caring way that if you want to reduce relapse risk, it's better to not have it at home. It's better to not be drinking around your spouse. Here's the other dynamic that happens too is like the recovering alcoholic will say, "Oh no, I don't want to ask my spouse to not drink because that's not fair to them and they're not really an alcoholic." And what I've really come to believe that is over the years in my experience is that it's almost like a vicarious way of drinking. If you can kind of make it okay for your spouse to still drink, it's not quite as offensive that you've gotten sober. And so I help couples work through that too, where look, let's just look at this for what it really is. Allowing alcohol to have the presence in that family after it has caused so much destruction, that's really what the issue is.
Yeah. It was interesting. Last Friday, I go to lunch every Friday with a whole bunch of guys. We've been doing it for 20-some years. Nobody drinks at lunch. Obviously, it's in the middle of the day. Well, last Friday was the Hawkeye game. And so we were going to sit around and watch the Hawkeyes. So the guy sitting right to my left and very close ordered a Maker's Mark, whatever it was. And when the girl brought it, she reached in front of me to lay it down in front of Tim, and I got that smell.
Yeah.
And I forgot the power of that smell.
Yeah.
Now, did I have an urge to drink? I don't think so. But I didn't stay and watch the football game because I couldn't get that smell out of my nose. And I don't drink anything, but I never drank colored liquor. I was always a clear liquor.
Yeah.
But it was that smell. And something inside of me, I think it's the tools that you guys have taught me, said, playmates and playgrounds. Do not sit here with these boys during the football game because they're going to get drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what you're also describing too is your own experience of not being able to get that smell out of your nose. Well, that's a brain thing. That's where the addiction has caused I like to describe it to people as well-worn paths in the brain, and that it takes only one small trigger to get to reactivate those pathways. And that's they've found more and more research in the last really 5 to 10 years about how powerfully that addiction changes brain structure, and why it's harder for addicts and alcoholics to deal with stuff like this. And that's why the age-old stay away from those trigger points and those playgrounds and those playmates really comes in handy. They knew all that back in the 30s when they came up with all of this stuff. But what now is that's all being borne out in brain research, which is really, really kind of cool.
Dr. David Kaptain has been our guest. Family Legacy, Bob Montserrat, the Cat in the Hat. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you. We'll see you Wednesday here on The View from a Pew. I had to think for a minute. On The Truth, 99.3.
Restoring hope.